welcome to another episode of Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinters. Today we have our esteemed guest, Dr. Brown, and we'll be discussing emotional scars in our ongoing series, Clarity in Crisis. So once again, thank you for joining us in this episode of Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinters. Dr. Brown, welcome and thank you. As I said,
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I said, we are focused on scars, and specifically, we're going to be focused on emotional scars today. As you know, in our series, we've been focused on awareness. Last week, the focus was awareness, and awareness is so important to the healing process, as we all know, or we should know. And if you're not aware, well, now's the time to talk about being aware. But awareness is so important to the journey of healing. And so we're going to take a time to talk about scars and how the different categories of scars are important for us to unwrap or unpack so that we can continue to develop our awareness of how to heal. So Dr. Brown, tell me this morning, in terms of emotional scars, give me some examples of what those may be.
So, well, first I want to say that emotional scars are the wounds that are not so easily seen. You know, when we're hit physically, we can see marks there, but when we're hit emotionally, spiritually, those scars are still there, but they're not so easily recognizable. Some examples of emotional scars can include feeling rejected as a theme constantly, feeling abandoned, feeling disconnected from other people, feeling like a failure, feeling inadequate, feeling not validated, feeling unloved, not good enough. That's the big one. Feeling as if you're not good enough, worthless, misunderstood, disrespected. There's a whole host of things that we see, but we don't generally think about these things as scars. We just think of these things as, oh, this person has a bad attitude. No, this person is hurting, and they are exhibiting their pain through these emotional examples that I just gave you.
Well, let's look at this from a global or societal perspective. Emotional scars, from my own observation, I'm not a psychologist, but just my own observation, it seems like if we want to relate it to something that's concrete, our current crises, our current environment is a reflection of the scars that have not really healed. They may have been buried, so to speak, or plastered over, but haven't really been healed. And I've been tempted in the past to think that because I have a scar, that means I'm healed, which is not necessarily so. Am I correct?
Yes, the scars are in the process of healing.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional scars are in the process of healing, but they're not healed. They're healed when those things that I mentioned to you no longer dominate our lives.
So it seems to me that in our society, for example, the whole racial injustice, which seems to be stifling the headlines, is a reflection of a wound or a scar that certainly hasn't been healed, and so it continues to bleed, and to the point where now everybody is like have to press pause, regardless of whether or not we want to, and that's the issue with scars when they're not dealt with. Would you say this is the outcome? These examples that you just reviewed with us.
Yes. This country, whether or not we choose to accept it, was supposedly based on religious values. And those values said you are to behave in a loving way. Well, everything but love has been a part of our reality in here. You know, on a large scale. Of course, everyone isn't unloving. I don't mean to imply that. But sufficient people in powers of authority behave in an extremely unloving way. For example, you know, let's just take the African American. When the African came over here, he and the people that came with him were indentured servants. They were Christians, by the way, okay? And this whole racial issue came up as a way to deal with the fact that here we have people who are human beings, who are Christians. We say we are Christians. How can we mistreat these people and call them animals? Well, we decide that we find a loophole. You know, we're very creative. We can find loopholes every way. And the loophole was, you know what? They're really not humans. Therefore, we don't have to treat them in a loving way.
And therefore, we rejected them.
Yes, and in fact, remember last time I mentioned to you that whole psychological diagnosis that said if you didn't want to be mistreated, you had a mental illness.
Dryptomania. Is that was the term? Dryptomania?
Yes. So therefore now there's anger, there's anxiety, there's resentment, there's violence, and many people are wondering why. Oh, you cannot mistreat people and expect them to love you. If they do, they have a mental illness.
Wow. Or the other part of that is from a global or societal perspective is the theory of the angry Black woman. And I often wonder, how could she not be angry? Most of her men are in jail or incarcerated or marginalized. She has no defense. So isn't that the normal response to injustice, anger? But for so long, I mean, I didn't even pay as much attention to it, to be honest. Since I came to America, I've been hearing this term of the angry Black woman. I'm like, what is the real root of that? And it's so clear to me now that they have a reason to be angry. Now, the thing I don't condone is, I don't think that people should do is use a scar as an excuse not to improve and get over, and grow. So while I'm talking about scars today and looking at the effects of the emotional scars, in no way am I saying then you have an excuse, because I think, well, what's your experience? Do you find that people can use scars as an excuse? Dr. Brown?
Again, people are quite creative. They can use anything as an excuse. People who don't want to take responsibility for themselves. However, I have to point out, if you are still slapping me, I'm not using it as an excuse. Stop slapping me. And then a different behavior. I mean,
so stop slapping me and then, okay, that makes sense.
You know, when America disconnected from England, they sit down and have a protest. They picked up guns and they fought. And nobody said that they had some emotional problem. They were fighting for liberty. Now, I don't think that, again, how shall we say this? I think we need to find a different way to resolve our problems. We have been given an answer, but by and large, we don't want it, okay? The answer came when the Pilgrims came to this country, God and his way and his principles. But folks don't want to do that. They want to do their own thing. And so, I think we have the mess that we have on our hands, where people feel that they should have the right, but they have the right to violate other people's rights.
Right.
We don't have a consensus on what our guiding principles are, and so we are in a mess.
Okay, so we have a societal impact of scars, the collective, and how it's affecting us in so many different areas that are just, in and of itself, it seems like a pandemic, just the fact that injustice is so rampant. But then we come down to the individual, which is really how we can really impact the society, is how we deal with our individual and personal scars. And if we don't address those, if we don't address it at the individual level, it's unlikely that the society is going to be changed. So give me some causes of the scars besides what we've just mentioned.
Okay. So the causes of the scars are traumatic events that have happened in a person's life. Mm-hmm. And speaking, a lot of times in early childhood. Okay, so some example could be a family member dying. My mother died when I was 2 years old. That created a scar in me. It created this feeling abandoned, not belonging. Let's see, having a family member or a close member abusing drugs or alcohol. Now you have somebody that you're dealing with that their mental state is altered, and whatever problems they have is multiplied, and then they share it with you.
I can totally relate to that one.
Yes.
The emotional scar from a perspective of family dynamics. I think that's in this pandemic, I think, and this is a part that I pray about a lot. There's a lot of children right now that are enduring some ungodly situations because the collision of the different crises is causing domestic violence. And my heart breaks when I think about the emotional impact that's going to have long term, because I still deal with the emotional impact of having been brought up in a home where dishes were being smashed. And so I wrote the book, Peace Beyond the Splinters, to kind of give people an insight into how children, really need someone to really stand by them and be there in the middle of chaos and confusion. Because the anxiety that I have to navigate as an adult is no joke. So I totally can relate to that. And if anybody is struggling with that, please reach out to us on the Eve Speaks platform and speak to, so we can have a conversation or a free consultation with Dr. Brown. Keep going, Dr. Brown.
Okay. Well, other issues can include moving often, and people who are living at the bare minimum, who can't afford to pay their rent, are often moving, sometimes with other family members who have problems, and problems are multiplied. Having a sick parent is also a traumatic event. Being fat or obese.
It's funny how sometimes we don't necessarily see these, like you said, we don't necessarily see these things as scars.
No, actually what people do is they blame themselves. That's, they're injured and then they turn around and blame themselves for their injury. Yeah.
That is so sad. And that's from when I think about that, it reminds me of, again, the broader society, that people who are oppressed are then blamed for the fact that they are in a situation where they are feeling angry and rejected and mad, really, because they're responding to the fact that they've been wounded, but then they're blamed because they have a response. That is so frustrating. I just really think that is just worse.
You call it bind. No matter which way.
I lost the first part of what you said. Say that again.
They're in what's called a double bind. No matter which way they are wrong. And they just decide, I'm tearing the joint up. I can't be right, so you know what? I'm gonna get some satisfaction. Not the best way again, and certainly not a good way. But many people.
But it's when you're pushed to the limits, you feel like you can't win anyway. So why even try? It's that sense of giving up, really, which is really sad.
Yeah. Well, you see, when you take God out of the equation, no other alternative.
Wow.
And that certainly has happened. God was taken out of the school system. Curious, he's still on the dollar bill. I guess somebody's going to come up with a way to take him off the dollar bill too. I don't know. When people behave in unloving ways, it shouldn't be a surprise to have unloving reactions.
Right. Unloving ways produce unloving reactions. Wow. So tell us a story that you encountered, whether with yourself or somebody that you know, that manifested itself, a scar that manifested itself, and how you or the person have been able to deal with it and how they navigated it. Because in my experience, a scar is just another word for the word splinter. How did you navigate, and what is the mindset that's needed to navigate the scar, aka the splinter?
So I'm gonna give an example that I think many of us have to deal with today, and we don't understand it, and that is dealing with the narcissistic person. These people have children, and when they have children, they play all sorts of manipulative games with these children. Some of the games are called gaslighting. That's just a fancy way of saying being creative with your lying, okay? They rearrange reality. For example, let's say you're sitting at the table with, I don't know, your mother. Now, this is a very dysfunctional mother. And you put the cup on the table, and she says to you, where's the cup? What the hell? It's on the table. No, it's not. Mind games.
Wow.
To make you feel crazy, to help you, to lead you to feel broken, and to leave you to feel unlovable, while they are presenting themselves as the perfect person. See? Something's wrong with you, but I'm okay, you see? And I will give you attention as it suits me. So
and in those cases, you feel powerless because you're the child and you actually believe it. That's the problem right there.
Well, you are powerless. You can't get up and walk and say, listen, this house is crazy. I'm going to go move to China or something. You can't do that. You're stuck with these people. So you end up trying to make sense of whatever they're doing. And the problem is, what you don't realize, what they're doing is they're trying to make you dependent. You are there for their good, to serve them, period.
So gaslighting is a rearrangement of reality. Is that what you said? Is that the definition from a psychological perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
And so these kinds of things happen even with adults. When people get into relationships with a person like this, the beginning of it is oh so wonderful. It doesn't matter whether it's intimate or otherwise, And then as you get deeper and deeper into the relationship, you start getting these contrary messages that leave you feeling confused, which is another scar, the confusion, the uncertainty about who you are, the uncertainty about whether or not you deserve love. But the idea that, oh, I don't deserve it, but this person is a very loving person because they treated me lovingly in the beginning, you see? And so you
can't make a separation.
Yeah. I stay hoping that at some point in time, I will get that love, but the reality is that you cannot get that love because the person doesn't have the ability to love. What that person is doing is what was done to them. You see? Mm-hmm. So they never ever learn what love is. To them, is manipulating people to get them to do what you want them to do. See?
Which brings me back again to the whole societal or the history of how we got here, slavery, the mistreatment. And so now that we are supposedly free, or call it free-ish, we still don't even know how to love each other within our own community, because it's almost like we don't know how, or we don't feel deserving, or we can't make a separation between the fact that we were hijacked and what really is real and true. So the scar runs deep.
Some of us. Some people do. Some people make the separation and they're extremely angry about it. Other people make the separation and they find their peace with God, who promises to take care of us. I'm one of those, you know? But now, all that craziness that happens in early childhood create in us it creates a certain type of person in us, a very insecure person, you see? And so we're always looking for somebody to give us that attention, that validation, the help, guidance, all the things that the parents are supposed to give the child to be able to function in society effectively. Now this person, who's probably an adult, is still looking for those things, but has no idea of what's real and what's not real. And so gets caught up in the craziness. And then they have symptoms, and some of their symptoms include nightmares, flashbacks, avoidance, heightened reactivity, anxiety, panic, depression. And you know, these things mirror post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, the children of narcissists who are insecure, who are having all these experiences, generally are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, when in fact, you know, it's, well, people today are trying to work on a separate diagnosis, you know, to explain this whole situation.
So what do you think then? How do you think people should try to deal with the scar, the emotional scars? First of all, how do they even uncover it? How do they know that they have a scar? How do they, once they identify it and they're aware of it, what's the first step in the process once they have the awareness to healing or dealing with the scar?
Well, I think the best thing is to seek help. When you
what kind of help? What kind of help?
Psychological help, spiritual help. In other words, you have been dealing with a situation that by this time has become normal, and you really believe it's normal.
You have to itself when you normalize the scar. Yikes.
Yes. It's the sort of the equivalent of you know, a frog. If you take a frog and you put it in water, in a pot in water, and you fire on slowly, the frog will stay in the pot and burn up. It can't tell that it's danger and you need to jump out. On the other hand, if you have a pot of boiling water and you throw the frog in there, he's gonna jump out right away.
Wow. So you're saying that the longer you stay in the pot, the longer you get used to the fact that it's hot and you think it's normal.
Yes. And so in order to change that, someone has to come along that you find, you feel you can trust to some extent. Trust is always going to be an issue, okay? For a while anyway. But once someone comes along that you feel you can trust, and they start to share things with you, you might begin to see that maybe there's a different way of looking at this.
Right.
I think the safest way at these days now, okay, is to go and try to get yourself some kind of psychological counseling, and doesn't have to be either or, spiritual counseling.
Okay, so we're winding down. We're about 3 minutes to go. Can you tell us from the perspective of the spiritual counseling?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
From the perspective of the spiritual counseling that you're referring to, what,
Right.
how would they go ahead? How would they proceed with that?
Well, by spiritual, I'm referring to Christianity. I can't speak to other things, but as far as Christianity is concerned, you want to find somebody that's really committed to what they say. There are a lot of people who say they're committed, but they're not, you know, and then they will add additional scars to you, you know. But hopefully, if you can find someone who you can see has a history of trying the right thing, you can go and talk to them. Hopefully, they also have had some kind of training, you know. People go off to seminaries and things like that, hopefully, to learn how to be of help to other people. You know, that's not always a guarantee, but you want someone who knows God and who understands human behavior and who is loving. That's a really important part, because some people could have experience, but they're not loving people. They can't help you.
Wow. So this idea of being aware is so critical to the healing process if we're going to uncover what our scars are. And it ties right back into the idea of self-care of the mind, the body, and the soul. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
The spirit.
Yeah.
The mind. It's the body, the soul, and the spirit. And the soul is the mind, the will, the intellect, the emotions, and imagination. That's the invisible part of you, but the very real part of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So for those who are listening or who will listen on the replay, we encourage you to sign up through the eSpeak platform, and Dr. Brown will continue to offer her services to support us during this crisis. I call it the avalanche of crises, the collision of crises, so to speak. And please reach out on ask_Dr. Mom. And remember, if you come through the eSpeaks platform, it is free. The support you get will be free for a period of time. I'm so glad you're able to join us. If you're listening on replay, we see your questions, we'll certainly respond. I wasn't able to see the questions here today. For some reason, I can't see them. But thank you for joining. And until next time, we will meet you in another episode of Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinters. Please join our Facebook community group, and as we journey to be the next best version of ourselves. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I've learned that a lot of people are listening in even though they haven't joined. And that's great. So I want to say hello to Ebony and hello to Rakima. Thank you for joining. They faithfully join in.
Oh, thank you. Have a great day, everybody, and continue to be stronger than your splinter. Bye-bye.
Thank you.